Vote and the continuing followed today with 3 members of Parliament who have joined me in the studio to talk about this. With me in the studio are Kerry-Lynne Findlay. She's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice. Francoise Boivin is the Justice Critic for the NDP, and Joyce Murray is the Small Business Critic for the Liberal Party. Good to see you all. Thanks for coming in to talk to me about this important issue. And Kerry-Lynne Findlay, maybe I can start with you. You voted against this motion last night in the House of Commons, but we have 10 cabinet ministers, including the minister responsible for the status of women, who voted for it. Should Rona Ambrose continue on as the Minister for the Status of Women?
Well, I mean, personally, as a woman, I was very shocked that she voted for the motion. But I just want, and the Liberal Party's stand is that she is accountable to the women of Canada and should be explaining. And I think the explanation you just gave is a very weak one when she is.
Okay, so if she's representing the women of Canada, can she continue in the role as the Minister for the Status of Women?
Well, she has a responsibility to be accountable to the women of Canada and to explain in a way that makes sense. But Peter,
but I'm trying to get what we think are the consequences of the vote. Should Rona Ambrose be out as Minister for the Status of Women?
I'm sure she must not.
It goes right to the Prime Minister. And what I want to say is that having been a member of an executive council, ministers' votes represent the government's position on something. So either the Prime Minister is not leading his own group effectively or properly, or he's not actually committed to keeping that debate or not opening the debate around choice. Because the minister responsible for the status of women is the voice of the government on this issue.
Okay, so are you calling for her to step down, or are you saying no, it's up to Stephen Harper?
Well, I think Stephen Harper should actually come clean about whether he really doesn't want to open the debate, especially when we see another member of Parliament without a uterus bringing forward yet another motion. So a serial set of discussions is not consistent with the Prime Minister's promise.
We're going to get to that, and that's Mark Warwer you're referring to, who's got a motion that would condemn discrimination against females via sex-selective pregnancy termination.
Canada, a fundamental right between a woman and her doctor to decide what happens with her body. That I respect. I'm not asking anybody to get or force an abortion on anybody.
Right,
it's for them.
But does that argument, Joyce Murray, still, and this is the point of the motion, does that argument still leave room? The issue can be between a woman and her doctor. Does it still leave room around the definition of what a human being is and when human life begins?
Well, I would put it
even outside the decision to have an abortion between a woman and her doctor.
I think once
if there's conversation around when human life starts.
But that's the problem. You need to have a conversation outside of those two people to decide. It's not for you to decide, or me, or Joyce, or Kerry-Lynne.
Okay, I would have a different way of putting it, and that is that in Canada, women have sovereignty over our reproductive choices and sovereignty over our bodies. And the Minister for the Status of Women is not in a vote like that representing her constituents. She is, and she is seen to be representing the Executive Council, which means government, of which the leader is the Prime Minister. So is the status of women in Canada that our reproductive choices should be subject to law and regulation from some other body? That is not the case now, and she's signaling that that should be the case, and I think that that was a huge mistake on her part.
Oh, should she? Okay, look, Francoise Boivin, should she be? Joyce Murray,
agreed. At a Canada Day picnic, if a minister makes a statement, it's interpreted as the voice of the Executive Council, the government, and that person's leader. So you can't get away from that. This is a minister that has said that she thinks that it's fine to reopen this conversation about whether women have right to choose and have sovereignty over their bodies or not as a matter of law. And of course, we respect people's different decisions for themselves, but in Canada, we don't have a culture and a society now where we force women to take measures with their reproductive choices that they don't want to choose. It's dangerous. It will lead to death.
We're all for conversation here, but unfortunately, we're also slaves to the clock a little bit, and we have to cut it off here. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.